Hey, I'm Sage Plays, and this is a brand new series for a brand new game, Planet Coaster 2. Welcome to Lake Liberty. Lake Liberty will be an American theme park built around a beautiful natural lake which the guests will actually swim in. It's based on some of the oldest and most classic theme parks in the USA, and it's all built in franchise mode. Let's go! Today we're going to start the park by building two very cool things. Firstly, a classic wooden coaster which the guests will actually walk under to get into the park, inspired by Belmont Park in California. And then the beautiful lake I spoke about in the intro, which is going to be inspired by lake compounds also in the USA. And we're going to be using one of the new features in Planet Coaster 2 to get the guests actually swimming in the lake. It's going to take some doing because guests can't swim in natural lakes in the game, but they can swim in pools. We're going to see if we can do some clever tricks with building to turn a pool into a natural lake. The white rectangle you see there is the size of the coaster that we're going to be building, but before we start building that, we need to put some paths in, and all the new path tools in Planet Coaster 2 are so good. There are so many different ways that you can build paths now. It is so much more powerful than before. This is the draw tool, which enables you to build big areas like this. You can do them in all sorts of shapes, but I want this car park to basically be square. We might do some more interesting things with it later, but we're just going to get that in there now so that we've got somewhere for guests to come from to get into the park. I'm going to have a tutorial on all the new pathing tools coming out the day Planet Coaster 2 comes out, so you can see that. I should probably say a big thank you at this point to Frontier for providing me with an early access copy of the deluxe edition, which is going to be very useful for building the kind of retro park that we're building here. And speaking of retro, it's time for our first ride, the Grand Carousel. This, I believe, is part of the deluxe edition of the game, which is all classic rides, and I want this to act as a weenie. So as you walk underneath the coaster to get into the park, this is right down at the other end of a long path and draws you in towards the rest of the park and the lake. Power options have been improved since Planet Coaster and Planet Zoo as well. We no longer need giant transformers everywhere. You can use these little power distributors, and you can actually make them smaller than this with the new scaling tool if you want as well. These send power around the park via wires, which I'm presuming are underground. You can't see them. You just link them up and then they disappear. And then you only need transformers to create little sort of banks of power to send them out to the distributors, which makes layouts much easier and much more attractive. Time to build our first ever coaster. So we are in franchise mode. We've not done any research yet, so we've only got a handful of options at this point in time. But luckily, the City Peninsula wooden coaster, which is the first option on the menu, as far as I can see, is very similar indeed to the coaster at Belmont Park. So that is what we're going to be using. I've got to say, I love the wild mouse as well. I think that's part of the deluxe pack. That is so cute. If we can squeeze that in somewhere in the park, we will do. We'll get the station in first. Make sure it's facing in the right direction. So the way the real coaster works is that the cars come straight out of the station and then take a hard left. Then they actually go sort of underground for a bit, continually turning until they hang a right and hit the climb, and that climb takes them over the heads of the guests that are coming into the park. It's a really cool entrance. We're going to have a massive sign on it that we'll build later. So let's start getting the track into place. We will leave the underground section overground for the purposes of this episode, because confession time, I have never played Planet Coaster. My entire time with Planet Coaster 2 was the hour or so early access event that Frontier invited me to about a month ago. So I think underground coasters might be a bit of a stretch for episode 1, but I've got to say, when this coaster is finished, it really does look very similar to the one at Belmont Park. I'm very happy with it. If you're new to my channel, by the way, we've been playing Planet Zoo on this channel for about 3 years now. I like to think I'm pretty decent at it, and there are a lot of skills that can be transferred from one game to the other. But in terms of building roller coasters, I am a novice, and I'm looking forward to learning all about them and how to build them as this series goes on. If there's one thing I know how to do, it's making things look good, and that is what we're going to be doing, making a coaster that really looks like the one at Belmont Park, and hopefully it actually works as well, but you'll be able to see that in the end cinematics. Alright, we've got the all-important lift in. It is 1 meter higher than the real one. I had to get it that extra meter just to give us enough momentum to get around the track at a good speed. We're then going to carry this curve round. This is the first drop on the ride. From the numerous Planet Coaster videos I've watched recently, it looks like the coaster building is pretty similar to the original, although I think there are more smoothing options, and some coasters have new types of track as well. I've started working on the colour scheme for the coaster as well, with the white supports and then various shades of red and brown on the track and surroundings. I don't know how this coaster rides in real life, but in terms of looks, it's definitely one of my favourites that I've seen, and that combined with the way the guests walk underneath it, you can see how there's no supports over the path, is what made me make this the first coaster in the park. Alright, we're about halfway through building the coaster here, so I think it's about time that we tested it. We've got a little crash test dummies in there. We will send them up the climb and see what happens. Okay, that's not quite as fast as I want it to be, but I do really enjoy the ending to a successful test. Let's get this finished. Lots more building done. We've got the other big curve done. And now it's time to join the track up back to the station. So I think this might be a new feature actually. You can just click on the part of the track that you want to join to, and the game will do it for you automatically, nice and smoothly. And now we can do something that is definitely new, customize our coasters. Firstly, we'll change the colors to match the real cars at Belmont Park, and then we'll go in and start attaching some scenery to it. So we're going to go with red and then black seats. And then we can put this sign on the front, which kind of changes the shape of the front of the coaster and enables us to put writing on it as well. And one of the new things in the game that's not in Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo is effectively null signs. You can now just write floating texts in any of the new fonts and attach that to anything you like. And with that done, we can move on to customizing the track itself. So we're going to have flagpoles at the top of all the climbs, and then we're going to move on to the big sign that announces the park itself. Now I started putting this in with billboards, and I've left this in here so you can see the new movement that we can do. This is taken directly from the console version of Planet Zoo. You can set the distance you want pieces to snap to, and then immediately move them by the amount of meters you want, so pieces snap together perfectly. It was designed to make the game playable with a gamepad, but honestly it is so useful even when you're on keyboard and mouse. What's less useful is that, unless I've missed it, the billboards in this game only exist for you to place the adverts for the various in-game shops on. You can't import your own custom graphics. That might just be me missing the option, but I didn't see that option anywhere. So we're just going to put text in, and then we're going to make our own design on the sign using one of the pieces in the game that's quickly become my favorite. We'll get to that in a second. Firstly, we're going to put a nice border in around the sign using these wood pieces. We'll come back and finish this later, but for now I want to get on to customizing the station. Again, we'll use the real station as the base. So we've got these lovely curved pieces. So we're going to place these down and get them in alternating colors that match the coaster. And then this is all on the grid, nice and simple. Normally we'd spend hours making a wooden roof out of tiny pieces that exactly matches the original, but we haven't even started the lake yet, and we've got a lot to get through today. So we'll use these curved pieces, I think they'll do nicely. And then we'll put some more wood pieces on the floor just to tie everything together and cover up most of the default station. I haven't noticed any customization options for the station other than it taking on the colors of the coaster itself, so we'll just cover it all up with this wood. And then we're going to get some custom fences in as well, just to separate it off from the track. So we use these mesh pieces, which you may recognize from Planet Zoo, and then just get these to line up with the little mesh pieces that I've already put in at the bottom, and just get away from the really boxy look of the station and start making it look a bit more interesting and realistic. And then we'll move on to the outside of the station. We're going to use the scaling tool to make ourselves a custom fence that matches what I'm seeing at Belmont Park. So we're going to take this metal piece and use it at this size for the fence posts, and then we'll put the rest of the fence in by shrinking it down, so we'll get it down to this size, and then we can just start cloning this on top of itself until we get to the same height as the original piece, and then we can copy these along and get ourselves a nice little fence. This cloning tool is so useful, especially with Frontier's love for oversized pieces. It makes it really easy to get things to a more realistic size. We'll use the same piece rotated to create the top of the fence, and then we'll copy it down so we've got a couple of these longer pieces at the top, and then we can just copy the whole thing down this length of path and get everything tied up with the entrance. And then it's on to more coaster detailing and some more use of the scaling tool. So I want to get some strings of lights up here so it looks good at night as well during the day. And they are slightly too big, so we can just shrink them down and they fit perfectly onto these new poles that I've just put in. And then we're going to do the same thing with this massive sign to add a big danger sign at the top of the lift, which is something else I've copied from the real coaster. Almost every piece I've seen so far is FlexiColor, which is great news. Then it's time to get the coaster actually working, so we need to put a queue path in and an exit path in as well, and we'll decorate those with some more new pieces. So these trim pieces are really cool, and they've got 2 FlexiColor spots on them, which is great. I'm not seeing any plaster panels, which is one of my favourite building pieces, but this piece from the resort pack is thin and completely FlexiColor and appears to be made from plaster, so we'll be able to use this instead. You can see this piece getting a lot of use. So we're going to make a wall out of these and then angle it so it fits nicely with the queue path and just start building this in so we get a nice cohesive building together. Then we're going to drop some plants in between the station and the path next to the queue just to make things look more attractive. Get a bit of lushness and a bit of movement in there. No more flowers and bushes clipping through things. Now that we've got the scaling tool, we're going to recolor that wood floor that we put in as well, just to make sure it matches the queue path. And then we're going to head out to the car park and build ourselves a little custom piece out there. So what I want is the dividers that you see a lot of in American car parks to show the cars where to go. Red and white plastic, easily movable, which is presumably why they're so popular. We don't have those in the game, so we're going to make our own, just using some more of these trim pieces. Dead simple little build, but once we get them in the right place and start copying them around, they look really effective. Now, I mentioned how the billboards are pretty much only for displaying adverts. There is some good news though. There's a load of new shops in the game, and the graphics that Frontier have created for those look absolutely amazing. So delightful. I'm not sure if that's a terrible name or a great name. The advert for that and the new coffee shop are really good, really modern, really stylish. So they look really good as billboards on the front of the park here. One more thing to do before we start on the lake, and that is to perfect this sign. We're going to use these new divided plaster pieces, which have this beautiful design already on them. I think that looks really cool. Let's hit the lake. Pools are the big new selling point in Planet Coaster 2, and we're going to build one now. There's loads of different ways you can build them, but the way we're going to do it is using the draw tool. Now, this lake, when it's finished, is going to be absolutely enormous. It is going to be a proper lake, but we're in franchise mode. We've already spent almost 70,000 of the 100,000 that we started with. So in today's episode, we're going to start the lake, just not quite as big as it will be when it's finished. I've done a lot of experimenting before we start this, and basically, if you completely cover a pool with scenery, so rocks, trees, bushes, etc., then the guests won't be able to get in and out of it. So the key to it is to create this small circular pool here, which the guests will be able to get into, and then we're going to start adding more and more pools to it, all connected, and each one of those will be completely covered in rocks and other pieces of scenery to make it look completely natural. And then we can keep this little bit here like it's a part of the lake that's been modified by the park, so it makes a nice entrance into the lake, much shallower, a place where the kids will be more safe, and then anyone who wants to can get out into the wider lake itself. I've changed the lake to concrete rather than tiles, so it's easier to make it look natural. We've got paths attached to this little entrance area here, so we've got these wooden boards for people, and then everything else has just been left plain, so it's easier to cover up, and then we can start having some fun with rocks. We'll put some little steps in for people to climb up here. You can also adjust the depths of the pool. So we're starting off with swimming, and then we're going to move to diving for the rest of it to get it nice and deep. You can also adjust the depth in the same way that you adjust the height of items, so you can get really precise changes in depth and smooth gradients and things like that. We'll bring that into effect later. But for now, we need another little bit of this natural path so we can get a diving board in here. There we go. Let's get on with our rocks. So we've got these rocks here with some vegetation on it as well. I'm using the tiger rocks, so you get the nice moss on it as well, which fits in with the tiger environment that we've got here. This isn't set in a particular place in America, by the way, just one of the slightly more northerly states, I figure, where it is beautiful in summer and cold in winter. And obviously the lake part of this park would be seasonal. For the bottom of the lake, we're going to use these huge pieces from the aquatic scene. I was really worried when I saw these in trailers because I cannot stand the colour of them, but luckily they are flexi-colour with 2 channels, so we can get really nice aquatic looking rocks here. And we're going to use these at the biggest possible scale to start covering up the whole bottom of the pool and start making this look like a proper lake. So we're just going to use this one piece and keep rotating it. I don't see a random rotation option in the game either. Hope that gets added at some point. It is so useful in Planet Zoo. We'll just place this last piece, and if we zoom out here and take a look at it, you can see that corner's starting to look really good already. Now we need to get rid of the bright blue bottom of the pool, so we're just going to use some simple plaster pieces to cover that up, and then get some more of our rocks in to join in the little entrance pool to the lake itself. Now, in order to get people into the pool, we need to provide them with changing rooms and preferably a drying facility as well. And we also need somewhere for our lifeguards and mechanic to go. So we're going to drop a couple of those in just next to the power distributor that we added earlier, and we're going to build a really simple little building to hide it in. We'll be coming back and improving this building at some point, but as you can see at the bottom of the screen, funds are at a premium right now, so we're just going to use some basic pieces, and there are some really nice basic pieces in this game to start making a little building that fits in with the vibe of the park, using those divided plaster pieces again. Time for the scenery brush. This is possibly my favorite new feature. I absolutely love doing this. All we need to do now is add in a lifeguard, and Lake Liberty is ready to open. Let's check it out. The first guests are on their way in, and how good does that coaster look? I love it. And this sign, even though it's just pieces rather than a billboard, looks really good. The lake is open. We will take a look at that in a minute, but first we're going to hit the coaster. I can't wait for the background that you see here to be filled in with the rest of the park. It's time to see how the coaster rides. It is so much fun watching it in first person when all the building is complete and seeing the little bits of scenery that we've added in so far as the coaster rushes past them. There's going to be a whole lot more scenery next week, but now let's go and check out the lake. I'm really happy with how this looks. We've only got a small part of it completed, but what we have looks so natural. This little dude jumping in there. Here's the carousel, needs a bit more work there. Next week, we're going to expand the lake to its full size and build our first massive flume based on a real one at Lake Compounds. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye.